In this video, I'm going to rather focus on a Judeo-Christian perspective. I just wanted to put that disclaimer out at the start so that I don't waste too much of your time if that's not your bag at all. Will I go to hell if I do magic? It's a question which contains so many assumptions. Just simply answering yes or no will be incorrect no matter what. Like asking, will using a knife land me in prison? Answering yes or no just like that without any precision about circumstances, it just makes no sense. No, using a knife won't land you in prison. Well, that's not always true, is it? In the same way, suggesting that yes, using a knife will get you into prison, well, that's an oversimplification too, isn't it? To the extent that the answer is actually inaccurate and unhelpful either way you answer. Will I go to hell if I do magic? Well, it's the same kind of question. Yes isn't an accurate answer, and no isn't an accurate answer. Not all the time. I do think it's a fascinating question, though. And while I realize it may not seem relevant on the surface to some viewers who have very strong opinions on the matter already, one way or another, I do think it's worth spending just one video giving you my take on the subject, which you're welcome to adopt entirely, cherry-pick the bits you like and the bits you don't, or reject entirely and use as evidence that I'm an idiot. You're very welcome, either way. What I will ask, however, is that you respect each other in the comments and remember that you're speaking to actual people, not to anonymous NPCs. But you're usually very good at that anyway, I trust you. One way or another, if the question interests you in any way, whether it's for the sake of informing your own personal practice, or whether it's just to hear what this foolish fish has to say on the matter, I hope you find some food for thought here that can help you to work out what your own conclusions are. Now, I think that one of the reasons why this question is so difficult to answer simply and directly is that it's actually many questions rolled into one. What is magic? What is hell? What is it about performing magic which might cause someone to end up in hell? Is it going to happen to me? Now, some people just content themselves with, hey, the Bible says, do not suffer a witch to live. The Bible says don't do it, so don't do it. I'm being kind to you for warning you that you're going to hell. I'm sorry, the Bible also says in Leviticus 10 verse 6 that if you tear your clothes, you'll die and the wrath of God will be on your people. And of course, who doesn't know the law about not eating pork, shellfish, and so on? Yet somehow so-called fundamentalist Christians don't go around looking for bacon eaters to tell them that they don't have a soul, and stop eating bacon because you're going to hell, and I'm only telling you this because I care about you. I really hate that word, fundamentalist, because it suggests that these people are somehow concerned with the fundamental principles of Christianity, which are actually love, forgiveness, and a personal direct relationship to God. And that's clearly not what these so-called fundamentalist Christians actually care about. I'd love to hear how such people make an exception for the three mages who clearly studied astrology to work out the time and location of the birth of the Messiah. So yes, as I was saying, will I go to hell if I do magic is a complex question. So let's answer its various parts. First of all, what is hell? A tiny bit of history first, without wanting to bore you too much. Dante wrote the Divine Comedy in the early 14th century, and with this book, he captured the Christian world's imagination with the images of his inferno, lakes of fiery sulfur underground, demons torturing sinners for eternity, and so on. It's all very easy to visualize. None of this abstract experience beyond the five senses mumbo-jumbo. No, here was a representation that even the dullest mind could understand. Fire burns, which hurts. I don't like being burnt. Hell is a big pit of fire. Sure, easy to understand. Not accurate, not even related to the same plane of existence, but good enough for the uneducated majority at the time, who, honestly, are too busy trying to survive another winter to spend much time pondering about the actual nature of hell. Actually, Dante's Inferno offers such striking imagery that still to this day, it's still the most widespread take on the idea of hell. If you ask most non-specialists today to describe hell, that's pretty much the version they're going to give you. If you ask them when someone might go there, they'll answer after death. And if you ask them under what conditions someone might go there, they'll answer if they've been a bad person during their life or done particularly bad things. Let me give you my views on hell. Hell and heaven are permanently with us, even when we're alive. My expectation is that they are more directly and completely experienced when the doors of perception are fully cleansed, to quote Blake and Huxley and Shaw, Jim Morrison. But still, these experiences are not something we have to wait until death for. During a life, we have many different levels of experience. Most of the waking day, most of us experience the so-called lower realms of material existence. And we sometimes ascend to the realms of imagination, and a few can train to ascend even further to more and more abstract modes of existence. But I actually prefer to think about it not as an upwards-downwards system, but rather as an inwards-outwards system, with the innermost being singularity, the most abstract non-dual point, and then the further out towards the outside of the realm of the self you go, the more and more concrete things become, until you get to concrete thought, and finally the outermost edge being the point where we meet the physical world that we interact with. When we feel uneasy anywhere on this circle of experience, that uneasiness is experienced everywhere in that circle, from the circumference all the way to the center. Like a stone dropped in a pool, rippling in every direction, from the outermost level of interaction with the outside world to the intermediate levels of imagination and vision, to the innermost layers of ultimate abstraction and spiritual purity. When you do something that you feel bad about, that negativity consumes your whole experience, like a shadow weighing over everything you do. In the outer physical realms, which we experience as everyday waking life, you experience it maybe only dimly, maybe as projections coming back at you if you stick to Jung's model of the shadow. But when you start retreating towards the more inner realms, you notice that your thoughts are all paranoid and worried. Even if this bad thing was seemingly insignificant, like telling a lie or saying something particularly unkind to someone in the spur of an angry moment, or whatever other trivial thing you might have done which makes you feel bad. On the surface, you might even learn to live with the guilt, put on a brave face for the world, even for yourself. Tell yourself you don't even feel guilty. But really, inside, there's a turbulence which makes it hard to relax. People repress those inner thoughts and they pretend they don't exist, but it doesn't make them go away. They stay there and fester until they get addressed. They infect our experience just a little bit, like a background infection which you don't even necessarily know is there, but it is there and it makes you just feel a little bit tired all the time. You just don't quite know why. The process of confession was actually designed to address this, to allow people to bring their guilt to the surface, lance the boil, as it were. But in practice, because it's all ritualized and forced to be a regular practice rather than just the occasional emergency surgical procedure that it's supposed to be, designed to fix a specific problem, instead it's a routine, and as a consequence it often doesn't have the effect it's supposed to have, and sometimes even has the opposite effect. And so people end up worrying about aspects of their lives that really shouldn't be causing worry. It's confession time. I've really got nothing weighing on my mind. I really should have something to confess, so it's going to sound weird, but I'm not sure what, so let me see. I guess the church doesn't like, I don't know, insert whatever Puritan hang-up here, probably a sexual practice. So yeah, I guess I should confess about that. Should I worry about that? Is it actually a problem? I mean, the church seems to think so. Maybe it is a problem. Wow, what kind of bad person does that make me then? I don't even think it's a problem. I must be so evil. I should confess more often. So yeah, this illustration is really to point out that guilt can come naturally from the inside, but it can also be planted from the outside in. And to be honest with you, while I do consider myself a Christian, this is the reason why I tend to avoid organized forms of Christianity, because honestly, I don't like muddling the inner, true guidance that I receive with the messages coming in from people who have just got hang-ups about some ancient laws that are supposed to be relevant just because they're contained in a book alongside deep spiritual truths. They can't work out the difference in importance between them. And their opinion of what's more important, the spiritual truths or the laws, it's really not my business. I really don't care about it. So no, I don't attend any kind of church. But I do consider myself Christian. In Matthew 6, verses 5 to 8, Jesus says, "And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. And then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." So yeah, as a Christian, I'll take my advice directly from Jesus and not from some organized committee. I'll finish answering the question about what hell is here, with this last point about the idea of heaven and hell being afterlife. I admit that I think of death as a temporary retreat from the outer layers of physical existence towards the inner, and that no, the inner layers don't go away just because the outer layers of physical manifestation aren't the place where we're focusing. On the contrary, the inner layers are, after death, precisely where we're focused. Those inner realms still contain all of that energy that we just spoke about that's been accumulated throughout our lives. And if that's all nice and clear and filled with, say, gratitude and love, then that is your heaven, right there. Those are the proverbial treasures you've stored up for yourself in heaven. As Jesus says in Luke 17, verse 21, "Behold, the kingdom of God is within you." Now, if your inner self is filled with guilt and worry and self-loathing, what kind of experience will that make for when you're entirely alone with it and it's the only thing you get to experience? Isn't this more likely than a fiery underground pit? And actually, you have to admit that a fiery underground pit is a great metaphor for this. But it is nothing more than that, a metaphor. So, now that I've talked a little bit about what hell is, it should be obvious what might lead there. Would magic lead there? Well, it entirely depends on what you're using the magic for. If you're using magic to cause your colleague to have a mental breakdown so that you can take his place in the upcoming promotion round, I mean, it's probably quite obvious what kind of inner experience you're setting yourself up for with that. But if the point of your magical practice is precisely to clear up unaddressed guilt, worry, self-loathing, so that you can move on with your life and live as God intended you to, then surely that's the exact opposite of what might actually, in fact, lead to hell. And this is, in fact, the whole point of what is known as high magic. Hopefully this is quite obvious. Now, what about things like money magic? Well, let's talk about money magic. Is money, in fact, so evil? When's the last time that you refused a paycheck? I mean, you might put forward an argument that our social construct, which values money above all things, could be considered to be evil, but money itself? If money were evil, then the self-proclaimed pure and righteous would have nothing to do with it. They'd soon find out that the lack of money is a great deal more evil in the physical world than its abundance. And now, being quite honest with yourself, what's really worse? Performing a couple of candle spells that lead to you getting a job that you love, that's actually useful to society and is well enough paid for you to be able to not worry where the next meal is coming from? Or making bucket loads of money selling weapons to desperate people as well as their oppressors, but all without magic? Which of the two do you really think is storing up an uncomfortable inner experience for themselves? No, money itself isn't evil. You can probably trace most evil back to a situation that involves money, a lack of it, or a desire of it, or an unhealthy relationship with it, and so on. So yes, in that respect, money probably can be said to be the root of all evil, but that's not the same as to say that money necessarily leads to evil. The root of all obesity is food. That's not to say that food automatically leads to obesity. Food is necessary for survival, and so is money. If you don't have enough to survive, what's wrong with a little money magic? Okay, last point. What about working with demons? That's a difficult one. And I'll say that most magicians manage to get through an entire magical career without needing to work with demons. I'd certainly say that if you feel uneasy about working with demons, there's absolutely nothing forcing you to do that. There are so many forms of magic, you really needn't worry with demon magic if you don't feel called to it. Now, do I think asking demons to do things for you leads to hell? No. No more than I think that asking a group of thugs to fix your roof leads to you needing to set up a long-term relationship with them. You pay them for what you promised, for the work they promised. In the case of a demon, it might be nothing more than the promise of a strong experience. I like Adam Blackthorne's suggestion of offering payment in the form of licking a lemon or watching a horror movie, offering fear as a one-off payment. But if the price is unacceptable, really nothing obliges you to take up the service. On the other hand, not paying a group of thugs that you promised to pay, that's a really bad idea. Do I believe that demons are safe to work with? No. The risks are real. They can be tricky and they can be dangerous. But are you risking hell just for getting a demon to do something for you? I mean, have you pledged allegiance to the demon? Have you prostrated yourself before the demon and worshipped it as a god? That's not how demon magic works. I've actually talked about my views on demons in other videos. That's not really the topic today. But honestly, if you're holding back from magic because you're worried you might have to work with demons, I'd say you can absolutely relax on that front. You can be a perfectly accomplished magician and never have worked with a single demon. You may find at some point that you actually want to get your demons under control, for example, either by force or by coercion at some point down the line. But really the only person who could ever decide that that is something you should or shouldn't do is only ever you. I repeat, there's nothing to suggest that you're doing magic wrong if you decide never to go there. It's your life. It's your magic. The choice is always yours what to do with it. I mean, you don't even have to do money magic if you don't feel comfortable about it. Magic isn't a race. It isn't a competition to see who can perform the edgiest, most dangerous rituals or spells. It's a powerful tool. And like any powerful tool, it should be approached with respect and a healthy amount of precaution. But don't insult your own intelligence. Heaven and hell aren't a reward and a punishment. That's preschool thinking. Heaven and hell are natural processes, natural consequences. Like watering a plant leads to it growing, and setting it on fire destroys it. The result isn't a reward or a punishment, it's just a natural cause and effect. And the ideas of heaven and hell are natural consequences that have had metaphorical narratives built around them to help simple people to understand them. But we mustn't confuse the metaphor for reality. I'll wrap up with this short passage from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 12. This is the New International Version, but you can look up Matthew 12 in any version you prefer. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath." He answered, "Haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do, but only for the priests. Or haven't you read in the law that the priests on Sabbath duty in the temple desecrate the Sabbath and yet are innocent? I tell you that something greater than the temple is here. If you had known what these words mean, 'I desire mercy, not sacrifice,' you would not have condemned the innocent, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." Going on from that place, he went into their synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Looking for a reason to bring charges against Jesus, they asked him, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" He said to them, "If any of you has a sheep, and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." Then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." So he stretched it out, and it was completely restored, just as sound as the other. But the Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. So there you are, 2,000 years later. It seems that some people still care more about the letter of the law than about the spirit of the law. But I would question those people's right to declare themselves to be more perfect followers of Jesus' teachings than your average magician, who may not even call themselves Christian. Thank you so much for spending a bit of time with me today exploring this difficult question. Hopefully it's at least got you to question certain narratives, even if it's my narrative you end up questioning. I think that any kind of questioning is healthy. It's kind of what I do here. I think that the big problem with a lot of this is the blanket resistance that many people put up to even thinking about these questions. Please let me remind you once again all to be your usual considerate selves in the comments section, and to remember that not everyone has had the privilege of enjoying an indoctrination-free life. Many people really are demonstrating tremendous bravery just by watching a video like this one at all. Please remember to leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and do consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'd like to extend my very special thanks to all the Foolish Fish members for your kind contributions and for helping to keep the channel sustainable. You'll find more details about the membership down in the description if you're interested in finding out more. And finally, let me thank in particular the level 3 members, the Magister Venerabilis members. This week they are L. West, Nia the Earner, Jason, Byron Marmol, Lucky Boots, Aristarchus, H. Happy, SMQAI, Michael Dunn, Will C., Alessio Di Gino, Raonei, Judy Hounson, Yusuf Saber, Frater Demianus, L. Harper, Connor Smith, Christopher Kunchik, B. Replicator 44, Tara Nicholson, Ricardo Colomé, Ra Skill YO, Oscudle in Tin, Amanda Mayer, Farian 1, Justin Lloyd, Rahul Nair, King Rainbow, Eleonora F., Jorge Salas, Luis Mancilia, Ian Smith, Osvaldo Gonzalez Nunez, Fernando Martin del Campo, Robert Mahoney, Alvin A., Frater VPF, VX, Frater D. Lane, A Million Ways to Wipe, Alexander Carval, Sheridan, Brandon Wilkinson, Andrew Kudlak, Mateusz Sadowski, Chase Lawrence, Mrs. C.Y., Medusa of Chaos, Seidr, Matu, Mystic Imagination, Merrily Duffy, Meta Gordy, Damnatio Memoriae, Sun Cat, Ted Kaiser, J. Joseph Safi, Kyle Walker, Roluch Ashron, Charbon, Patrick, Arcantum by Mr. Friborg, The Jade Ghost, Timothy Owens, and Z. Daniel Barnett. Thanks once again for watching. Do join me again with another video very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.